We are
Yeah.
speaking to Tom Ogren. He's a horticulturist who first came up with the theory of botanical sexism. He says the rise in allergies could be related to the gender of the trees. Uh, Tommy or Tom,
Either
what do
one.
you?
Yeah. My
Uh,
family and close friends call me Tommy, but
okay,
it doesn't matter.
Tom, tell us why you think that. Explain this to us.
Okay, in the last 30, 40 years, ever since all the elm trees died off, and those used to be the main street trees in America, they started replacing them with new clones of trees. And these are not usually seedling trees. These are trees that have been grafted or grown asexually. But anyhow, the trees that they started replacing them with predominantly were males. And so there's many common species we use in landscapings where if you go to nursery now, everyone you buy will be a male. Therefore, the ones they plant will be males. And so in some cities, and the males are very allergenic. They shed tons of pollen. The females drop seeds on the sidewalk or something. So the females are considered messy. And so like the USDA put out over 100 different cultivars just of red maple alone, and every single one they put out was a male. And these get to be big trees, shed billions of grains of pollen. And if you continue to just keep planting males, then you get ever increasing pollen. There's no two ways about it. And it's not just the trees, it's also the shrubs, all the junipers and something. I mean, I go for a walk every morning and I see literally hundreds and hundreds of juniper bushes. Every single one I see pretty much is a male. It's very easy to tell because the females would have berries. In Texas, and an allergist from San Antonio was telling me about this, you've got a huge number of native ashy junipers, which the males produce prodigious amounts of pollen. And the people who cut those for a living for fence posts or firewood, they don't like to cut on a tree that doesn't have berries on it because then they get exposed to the pollen. So they, without meaning to do any harm, they systematically just cut the ones with the berries off, and that means they're just removing the wild. So that's out in the wildland near Texas cities, where they are systematically cutting down the female trees when they shouldn't touch them at all, and they're cutting the males. And so even in the wild, we're getting this situation where we're getting more and more males and fewer females. And now the female trees, their job, if you will, is to trap pollen from the air and turn it into berries or fruit or seeds or something like that. And if you keep removing the females and you don't plant any more females and you keep planting males, you have botanical sexism and you have an ever increasing pollen load. And this is why the pollen counts are higher in cities than they are out in the country. When out in the country, you have way more trees, but you have generally, not necessarily in Texas, but generally you'll have a gender balance. And in nature and in most things, balance is good. And we don't have that balance anymore in the cities. And it's not just in the United States. I've seen the same phenomena in Israel. I've seen it in New Zealand, Australia, Ireland, England, but in the United States in particular, it's very bad. In Canada, also very bad.
So, so you're saying that female plants absorb or trap pollen.
Right,
So
and
would
they
there
shed
be?
no pollen at all.
So
So
are you suggesting that if we had more, if we would have less pollen if we had more female trees around?
100%, absolutely, absolutely. We have, the more female trees we have, the less pollen we'll have in the air, always, no exceptions to that.
What can people do in their own yards?
Okay, and that's a very good place. I mean, in your own yards, and this is how I got started because my wife has bad asthma and bad allergies. Um, when I became aware of this 30 some years ago, I systematically went through my own yards and I removed all the male plants and I replaced them with female plants. And then we bought another house and I did the same thing. And what's happened is I'm trying to cocoon my wife in our own yards. And by doing that, I have reduced her allergies and she hasn't had any asthma for years. So it's been very effective in my own case. Uh, I correspond with people all around the world on this, and I get emails every day from people who ask questions about it. And I share the information as best I can with everybody. And many people have told me that they have cleaned up their own yards, meaning where they spend most of the time. And as a result, their allergies are a lot worse, and their asthma is often disappearing. Another thing is, like in Canada, I have a friend of mine named Peter Pracky, who's in his late 80s and very involved in this. And he's got entire school districts to agree that all landscaping at the schools in the future will be allergy friendly. He's been involved with what's called bravery parks. Each new park is named for a soldier from Canada who died in the wars in the Middle East. And all of the bravery parks are being developed to be hypoallergenic, if you would. They're not planting any males, they're planting lots of females. And there are many, many things we could do about this, but people who have allergies, they can be quite miserable for months on end, and yet they don't seem to have any kind of rights that other people with I mean, you could say allergy. I mean, if you're a kid trying to study for a test, or you're taking a test and your nose is running and your eyes itch and everything, you can't concentrate. It is very difficult. These people should have rights too. And these rights should be respected. And as far as the trees that are not separate sex, it's entirely possible to come up with female versions of virtually all of these trees. The USDA has the clout, they could do it. The USDA, by the way, doesn't believe that this is baloney. I've been working with them for 23 years now. I recently did a peer-reviewed paper with the top urban forester in the USDA. This is a big part of the whole allergy problem. And then as global warming and climate change gets worse, the pollen seasons become longer. Well, then it becomes more important. As our carbon dioxide levels get higher, carbon dioxide makes the plants bloom more. That means if they're males, more and more pollen. These are reasons why we need to make all of our cities as allergy friendly as we can. And I would love to see them start with parks and schoolyards, because in schoolyards in particular, the landscapes are often super allergenic, and it may be that they didn't want the kids to pick up any seeds or pods or fruits and throw them at each other, as kids will, and so they went out of their way to make them as sterile as possible. And so they planted many, many male plants. And when we kick off the allergies at that level at a school, well, then we prepare these kids for a lifetime of allergies, and then they can morph into asthma. And asthma used to be rare. And when I first started my studies, less than 12% of the population of the US had allergies. Now it's around 40%. And it just keeps growing. But somebody people have to step up. Some cities have made pollen control ordinances now, and that means you can't plant these male shrubs, trees, and that's a great idea. We don't need to. We can have a landscape that looks exactly the same, just as nice, and it can be allergy friendly. We don't need to keep planting all these allergenic plants, and if we do, I mean, how bad do we want it to get? In 10 years, it could be that everybody had allergies. And if we get to a point where massive numbers have asthma, I mean, it could just be a staggering, terrible thing for the economy, for people, for our health. And besides, when you're being attacked by allergies and so on, it stresses your system. And when you stress your system, you then become more susceptible to other things. And so if you look at the data, you see that on high pollen count days, deaths from all causes rise rather dramatically. 20% rise, just like in deaths from heart disease, heart attacks, all these different things are all related. And
Right. So, let me ask you this. So,
yeah,
you said that we could plant more, allergy-friendly trees around
yeah.
our yards and our schoolyards and parks and all. But would that really work though? Some people say pollen is in the air and it travels by wind. They're wind pollinators that send pollen miles and miles away. I mean, even if I cocoon my yard, I'm not like really away, protected from all this other pollen that's coming through the wind.
Okay, I would agree that by doing your own yard as allergy friendly or allergy free as possible, you will not stop all pollen coming in from the wind. And on windy days, more and more, when I go for a walk every morning, when it's a lot of pollen in the air, like right now, and a lot of wind. And I didn't used to have allergies, but even I'm getting allergies now. But I put on a face mask when I walk, and people say, "Oh, are you still afraid of COVID?" And I go, "No, I'm fully vaccinated. I've had 2 boosters, but when I wear the face mask, I'm not getting a face full of pollen. And then when I come home, my nose doesn't run all day, you know?" And so, yeah, the face masks are great. I would, I'm becoming a big believer in a face mask, certainly in the springtime when the pollen's so bad. But I would also say that everybody that improves their own yard makes for less pollen in the air for their neighbors. And when the city does it on a big scale, that makes less pollen for everyone. I would also say that there's a lot of confusion about how far most pollen travels. Most pollen lands right close to where it starts. And so if you take a big male tree, you will have huge amounts of pollen within 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 feet of that tree. And as further you go away, you'll get less and less and less. And it's not a question of not getting some pollen. There's no problem with getting some pollen. It's a problem with getting massive amounts of pollen. So if the city plants a male tree out in front of your house, every time the wind blows, if it blows in your direction, all that pollen comes right into your yard, and there's been lawsuits. I've been involved in this, about what the city's planting. And at the same time, people are oversimplifying the whole thing, and they're saying, let's plant millions of new trees. They don't talk about what kind of trees, but trees are like people. Some you would want as friends and some you would not. and some people you could trust and some people you can't. And all trees are not the same, not at all. It's just like trees in effect are very much like people. Some are tall, some are short, some are skinny. So, it's like there's a huge difference. And particularly when it comes to allergies, trees are not trees. You got to be smart about this.
So, they also, I also read that there are both male and female parts in some trees, the monoecious.
Monaceous, yes.
And so, aren't most species monoecious, tree species?
Okay, most species are either perfect flowered, like a rose bush, or an apple tree, and those are not generally the problem. The wind pollinated ones. And so the monaceous, the ones that have male and female, like take a birch tree. yeah, that will shed a lot of pollen, or alder tree, or many different trees. But it is entirely possible to take, horticulture's already done it. They have taken monaceous species like cypress, and they have eliminated the female parts, and so that most of the cypress that are now being sold are all male. They have done this like a honey locust tree, and they've planted millions of these trees in Toronto, Canada. Half the trees you see are honey locust, and a honey locust tree in the wild is always monaceous. However, in the city, they are all just male clones, because horticulture already figured out how to get rid of the messy female part on the monaceous tree. And so even with the monaceous trees, we are trending toward more and more male, more of the botanical sexism. Well, I say, why don't we reverse this? Why don't we take trees like birch trees and sycamores and so on, and why don't we come up with female versions of it? And we could totally do it. I would work with anybody. I know exactly how to do it. And just plant the whole landscapes to be allergy friendly. Think of the favor that we would do all these literally millions of individuals that are now being affected by this.
So, we also spoke to an urban forestry official who says in nature, you will see 50-50 of everything. I mean, it's in nature, there's not an issue. He says planting more female or monaceous species may not help, because there are other trees all around us and that might send pollen in your way. I mean, what do you say to that? I think you kind of answered that, but do you mind telling me about, in nature, we it seems like we could be 50-50. How can we
Okay,
avoid that?
I would say that if it's real nature that hasn't been manipulated by people, in real nature, you do have more of a 50-50, and then you have a balance, and you have 50% female trees, which are targets for the pollen, and they will trap this pollen very effectively. That's what a female tree is designed to do. The pollen from the males is light, and it's sticky, and it's dry. The female, it's not sticky, it's dry from the males. The female flowers are sticky, they are feathery, they are designed to trap pollen, and there's also what's called mutual attraction. The pollen in the air tumbles around and it picks up a positive electrical charge. The female trees are grounded, and when you have positive the pollen and negative the female, you have mutual attraction, and it attracts it right to it, just the same way a TV screen attracts dust or something. It's not just happening by accident. The female trees are very effective at trapping pollen. And this is why if you go into real rural areas, you find very much less allergy and asthma. And if you get into the cities where you don't have this balance of the genders, you have these basically an epidemic of allergies going on. I mean,
Right. Let me tell you, so there has been some criticism to your theory. Some people say that this is not going to work. It's bogus. That's not possible. What's your response to that?
well, my response to that is if we keep doing things always the same way that we always did, and yet we see a growing problem. So we keep landscaping our cities the way we always did, say, like we take a negative approach. There's nothing we can do. But at the same time that we're doing that, we see that we've had a jump in allergies from around less than 10% of the people to around 40 or more percent. We've got a real problem, and if we say, oh, let's just keep doing everything the same way because that won't work. I would also say that my critics haven't spent enough time digging into this. I've been working on this on my own largely for more than 30 years now, and I've seen it work. I know it can work, and I know the flat fact is female plants do not produce pollen. And and male plants do. And every time you plant another male, you increase the pollen load. And every time you cut down a female tree, you are increasing the pollen load. And so, and it's not just, I'll give you another example. People plant some seedling trees, say they plant box elder trees or something. And one tree makes a lot of seed and the other one doesn't. So the homeowner goes out with a chainsaw and they cut down the one that has the seeds on it, right? Well, now you just increase the pollen load because now that male pollen that from the males has nowhere to go. And so it comes to the homeowner. And this happens with many, many species. I see it happen all the time here and many
So,
other places.
so what do you recommend people, like, the city managers and urban landscapers and urban forestry officials? What is your solution? Like, what do you
Okay.
think we should do?
Oh, all right. So I wrote 3 books at least on this subject, and the last is called The Allergy Fighting Garden, published by Random House. In it, there's over 3,000 plants that are used in landscapes, the most common plants and shrubs and everything, flowers, all of it. And every one of them has a 1 to 10 ranking, 1 being least allergenic or allergy-free, 10 almost guaranteed allergies. And the scale is called OPALS, OPALS. People can look it up on Wikipedia. I developed OPALS many years ago because most people are not horticulturalists, and it took too long to explain it to them. But if I showed them a number and I said, well, this is a 3 and this one is a 9, well, there you go. It's real slam dunk. It's like plenty of places are using opals now. I mean, if you look on the tree list of the city of Los Angeles, every single one of them has an opals number of 1 to 10. And that's just fine with me. There are nurseries in the UK where every single plant tag, every plant sold, all of them, has a tag in it with the opals number on it. And they have signs explaining what opals means. It means if you just love this plant and it's a 9 or a 10, well, fine, but maybe don't plant it by your kitchen door or your front door, and don't plant it near your kid's bedroom. I mean, what you plant next to a child's bedroom have a huge influence on it. I've seen many cases where people get a hold of me because a child is sick for often months at a time with terrible conditions. Nobody can figure out what's wrong with them. And then it turns out they've got a super allergenic male shrub or something right next to their bedroom window. And at nighttime, that pollen is coming in there. And bear in mind, some of these male plants used like this are poisonous. And so it's not just a question of allergies. In California, we have these yew pines planted everywhere. They are poisonous species. The pollen is poisonous. You have
So,
yews, Y-E-W-S, that are planted in Texas. The yews are all separate sex. The males make amazing amounts. Yew and podocarpus both are used for chemotherapy drugs. And so if you go to the nursery, you buy a yew, and you don't know if it's male or female because it doesn't have a tag and nobody tells you, and the person selling it doesn't know, and you plant it next to your daughter's bedroom, and it gets big and it produces all this pollen in the spring or early summer, and it comes right through the window screen. The window screen won't stop that pollen. And every grain of it is not only allergenic, it's cytotoxic. And so you're getting
right.
all kinds of
So,
terrible health results.
so let me ask you this. So, like, but you're not suggesting that we cut down male trees or do anything like that. Like, what I understand the opal scale, but like, what other practical advice would you have for people to do?
Okay, I don't suggest that the cities start cutting down all the male trees because we need trees for many, many reasons. But I would suggest that if it's in your own yard and you have allergies, yeah, cut it down and replace it with a female tree, and do the same with the shrubs. I mean, if you go to the White House, And you look around the White House, the whole White House has foundation shrubs that are yews. And all of those yews look to be males. I've been there, I've seen it. And I wrote to him about it and I was ignored. And that was during the time of Obama. And his daughters apparently have bad allergies, but my my advice was ignored or
Right.
something. But the fact is, if you put it right in your face, particularly like right in your yard, right near a bedroom window, or right next to your front door or back door, you're setting yourself up for problems. And the
Right.
problem will get worse each year.
Besides botanical sexism, what else do you think could be contributing to high cases of, the allergies?
Well, of course, climate change is making it worse, and the increase in carbon dioxide. If you go to a modern greenhouse, they have carbon dioxide injectors. They keep it high because that makes everything flower. So it's it's not just about planting female trees. There's plenty of trees that are perfect flowered, like an apple tree. All right. An apple tree is not causing a lot of allergies, not at all. An apple tree blooms, it has male and female in the same flower. They're designed to be pollinated by bees. And insect pollinated plants are not causing the allergies. There are some, and hence opals. But by and large, we could be planting many more of these perfect flowered trees, a plum tree or something like that, a peach tree. These are not causing allergies. Yeah, they make fruit, but so what? I mean, my yard is stacked full of not just female trees, but also perfect flowered trees. I've got apricot trees, peach trees, plum trees, all kinds of fruit trees, citrus trees. And
So basically, you're saying trees that are insect pollinators are good for allergies.
yes,
Okay. And then
definitely.
and then what about grass?
Oh, with grass, for
Grass
example,
and weeds.
okay, grass and weeds, particularly grass is real important, all right? And there are many species of grass that are separate sex. So for example, I've got a lawn that is made out of Texas bluegrass, native to Texas. And it's Texas bluegrass is a male, female, separate sex species. The ones I planted are female, and they spread through the roots, and that lawn is 100% female. It makes a good lawn. It's tough. It's drought resistant. It's a native. I also have another small lawn that is buffalo grass. Buffalo grass is separate sex. The plant is either all male or all female. The ones I planted was a female clone. That entire piece of lawn produces no pollen. It traps pollen. With ornamental grasses, there are a bunch of new ones. People could contact me. I give them a list of those that are male sterile. There are grasses where they hybridize one species with another, so you get these interspecific hybrids. There are ones where they even hybridize two different genres. So you have like ryegrass crossed with bluegrass or something, and or fescues, and these grow great. They make perfect pasture. They spread by the rhizomes, but they're male sterile. They don't have any male, they don't produce any pollen. So even with the grasses, okay, one of the first, which is used in a lot of places in Texas, you take a real allergenic grass like Bermuda grass, common Bermuda grass, but they have at least 20 different clones that are all better than common, including the first one was called Coastal. And that one doesn't produce any pollen. They are basically all female grasses, and those are wonderful. Why don't we specify in a city, if you're going to plant a lawn, plant a lawn that's allergy friendly. Don't plant a lawn that's producing grass pollen. The grasses are totally we could totally have allergy-free grasses everywhere, including the pastures around the city. If you have massive areas of pastures and haylands and stuff, all of those grasses, the USDA has been developing those for years. And we need to encourage people to use those, discourage them to plant the stuff that does cause the allergies.
So are these available in nurseries and places like that if people wanted to buy them for their own yards?
Yeah, they are if you know what to ask for. You can't count on the nurseries knowing about this. You have to know specifically what type of grasses you want. And it's not just good enough to say you want Texas bluegrass, because if they just plant it out of a seed mix, it'll be a mix, but you don't want the mix, you want the all female. Same with the buffalo grass, and there's other grasses besides, but the grasses are totally, we could have allergy-free grasses all over the place, and I have them myself, and they grow just as good as the other ones. If anything, the female grasses tend to grow a little lower, so you don't have to mow them as often, which is a big advantage.
So, I think I'm good. I'm set. Thank you so much.
Mhm.
Thank you so much for doing this for us. I really appreciate it. But tell me something. Is there anything else you want to add to this, or are you good with this?
I would just say that, like, it's time to be imaginative. It's time to think outside of the box. It's time to look at the whole big picture of this. It's time that, like, cities get on board. It's time. Oh, how about insurance companies? The amount of money they could save if the cities became more allergy friendly. It's a win-win for everybody. And any big wholesale nurseries that wanted to call me up and ask me for advice, I'm open to talk to everybody. I'm at this point in my life, I'm 75 years old. I'm just trying to share what I have learned. And the reason I learned is because I started to study it plant by plant, and nobody else was doing it. That's why you and I are talking about this now. But we could have and I would also say the food allergies are all related to this too. So let's keep that in mind. If you kick off a pollen allergy, you're going to kick off food allergies at the same time. They are cross-reactive. And just because, like, people often dismiss allergies by going, it's not that important. You sneeze, so big deal. Well, it is a big deal. And now with COVID, good Lord, you're in a store and you sneeze, everybody runs away from you. but yeah, I mean, this is a problem we could solve. And one of the ways we solve it is I talk to reporters like you, and you ask me intelligent questions, and I give you the best answers, that people run with it. But
Well, thank you so much.
Yeah, it's a public service.
Right. Thank you so much, Mr. Ogren. I really appreciate it. This was really informative.
Thank you, Aparna, for getting a hold of me and talking to me. I appreciate it.